Hey, this is Scott Kokenauer. I am so glad that you took time out to tune in to this episode of Fridays on Excellence. We are talking about relational excellence today, and I've got a special guest with me to talk about that. But before we do that, let's go into our first segment of the show, which is our 3 coaching questions. Question number 1: how well do you play with others? How well do you play with others? Number 2, who is a great example of teamness in your life? Who is the example that you would use if someone said, who is the best team player that you know? And number 3, where do you see bad teams? And what makes them bad? That's an extra question at no extra charge to you. Where do you see teams gone bad? And what do you consider them as bad? Why are they bad? Okay, so this segment has 3 coaching questions for you. You can see Charlotte, my coworker. She normally is the one that does sleeping while I do all the work. Anyway, she's going to sleep there while we do this. So the 3 questions are designed not for you to answer them right now. In fact, don't answer them at all for the next week. Just let them stay with you. I encourage you to write these 3 questions down on a 3x5 card, put them by your computer screen so that when you're in your Zoom meeting, you can be thinking about teams this week and relationships. That is the first segment, which is coaching questions. We're going to move on to the second, which is our 2 pillars of excellence. And with me, I have asked Tim Figley, my cohort and good friend in business. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Glad to be here with you and Charlotte today.
Yes.
A little extra privilege.
She's guarding the door. I cannot leave until this is done. I'm hoping she doesn't have to go to the bathroom while
she hears you talking about her.
Yeah, she heard me. So anyway, for those of you listening on the podcast, we're talking about my English Springer Spaniel, Charlotte, and we call her Charlie for short. So Tim, we are talking about teams in this relational excellence, and I'm going to pull up a graphic which probably everybody on LinkedIn has ever seen. If they care at all, they've probably seen the ad for the 5 dysfunctions of a team, or better yet, the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. I know from firsthand experience, I have watched you present this to teams and I'm very impressed. So you are the best I know to bring light to these 5 pillars or these 5 sections. I'm going to stop talking and just let you talk. You can guide me as far as the pillars go. So let's just get right into this. So we're looking at a triangle, and maybe you can share what that looks like.
Yeah, so I love it. And I've also been privileged to work with you on these 5 dysfunctions of a team and 5 behaviors of a cohesive team with some organizations. And, you know, we're talking about the 2 pillars today. And one pillar that we talked about was, or pillar 1 would be that dysfunctional teams can change. And I really love that because with a little bit of knowledge, with a little bit of practice, some rehearsal, some commitment, you know, teams that are dysfunctional can actually make a change. And Scott, we've seen this work. We've seen teams get better, and we've seen this work together where we've observed and been a part of teams that didn't have a strategic plan, probably without going through and building their team, getting their team to be better, they wouldn't have been as successful in implementing. And yet they are, because they learned a lot here. They learned how to handle their conflict, trust, commitment, accountability, and results. And then the second pillar that we talked about was cohesive teams can thrive. So those are the 2 pillars that I know we talked about, you know, ahead of time, that would be a great way to identify this. Dysfunction on one side, cohesiveness on the other side, and then the 5 things that either make a team dysfunctional or cohesive in the middle. I think you're muted, Scott.
So let's go through this.
Yep.
And walk us up the triangle.
Sure.
There are 5 segments. For those of you listening can't see this, we will put a link to the graphic in the show notes. But let's start at the bottom or the top.
Yeah.
You do it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think the bottom is right. I like the bottom, and I like it. So this was designed. This pyramid that we're looking at here was designed by an author named Patrick Lencioni. He's from the West Coast. He's done team building and development for years as far as in organizational consulting. He created this in working with leaders and realized that that if teams lack trust, all of these subsequent things above trust on the pyramid were going to be a problem. And if you couldn't get results and you couldn't be accountable and there was a lack of commitment, it was going to be a pretty big problem. So he created this pyramid. And the pyramid, as we know, any pyramid, the foundation is the bottom, right? That's the foundation of a pyramid, and it's the strength of the pyramid. So that's why I think we should move from the bottom upward.
Okay.
And that bottom area is trust. And, when we think about a dysfunctional team, it's going to start with the absence of trust. So that's the beginning part. And if they're going to correct the rest of the triangle, they're usually going to have to start dealing with any interpersonal trust issues they may have on the team.
Okay. So we can't skip trust and go try to resolve conflict, which is the next one up. We have to have the trust in order. Okay.
Right. And I will say this, that by resolving conflict, you can restore trust. So they're certainly related. They can go back and forth. The absence of trust, as we can see on the screen, the antidote to that, that is at least stated here, is building trust through vulnerability without the fear of repercussion. So what that essentially means is that I can bring my full self to you. I can reveal what's going on in my world and how I'm working without the fear of maybe being punished. I can bring to you, and I can know that if I'm doing it wrong, we can work together. So I'm not afraid to bring it to you, right? If you're my boss, I'm not afraid to bring it to you. If I'm afraid to bring it to you because of punishment, I'm going to hold back.
Yeah.
Right. So I need to be able to bring it to you, and we need to be able to collaboratively and collectively say, how are we going to overcome this challenge? Right. So that's where I think trust starts with relationship. It can't be just transactional. It really starts with the relational components.
Okay, good. So on trust, then we build to the next one. Right.
So conflict, and the idea behind this is that on a dysfunctional team, there's a fear of conflict. Mm-hmm. On a healthy team, we're not afraid to have conflict. And the reason we're not afraid to have conflict is because we trust the other person's intention. That's why trust is so essential. If I trust your intention, I'm not afraid to bring you the hard issues. I'm not afraid to deal with the difficult things. I can bring you those challenges. I can have conflict, and we're not making it personal. This is not about, personal attacks in that kind of conflict. It's about dealing with the issues. And that's why, the antidote here is constructive debate. We're going to debate around what we need to do. We're going to debate around how we get the outcomes. And that healthy debate can create synergy where it didn't exist anymore. So conflict can actually be a gateway to innovation. And teams that don't have healthy conflict are going to lack the potential for innovation. And then the third area on this pyramid, which is commitment.
So let's stay here at the conflict and trust section here. What I think about when I hear you talking about the conflict and trust, I think of the elephant in the room. So when there's a team meeting around a table and things aren't getting said that should be said, that's the proverbial elephant in the room that no one talks about, but
What
everyone
elephant?
sees it. It's right there. It's right beside you. So a dysfunctional team will have elephants. All right.
Yeah, maybe many, maybe big ones, maybe little ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah, that's good.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the commitment one, the next one up.
Right, right. So this is interesting, and this is something I had to continually learn over and over in providing 5 Dysfunctions of a Team workshops and helping teams go from dysfunctional to cohesive. I had to continually grow in this understanding of how commitment is actually built by healthy conflict. And again, by reading and rereading and watching and observing and being involved, a team that is not afraid to speak up to one another, not afraid to challenge one another, is going to be committed. They're going to be committed because they're going to have a voice. They're going to be able to share their voice. And when they share their voice, and let's imagine we don't agree on something and we're debating a little bit. We're going to debate. If I know you've fully heard me, right? It's not about that I have to agree with you. I don't have to agree with everything. I don't have to agree with the outcome that we've decided on. But if I know I've been fully heard, and here's the important thing, fully considered in that conflict. If I feel like you have valued what I've said and you've considered deeply and truthfully what I've said, and then you say, this is the way we're going, and you're a leader, then I know that I've been valued and you care for me enough that I'm going to take the risk with you, even if I don't agree to go down your road, right? If we're on a team. Wow. And so commitment is going to happen when people are allowed to have that constructive debate and have been fully heard, understood, validated, and considered. And they're going to be bought in to the core because they know how much they're valued.
So I want to address the leader who is listening, who has a strategy. All right. There's something that this leader wants to do with the organization, with his team or her team. And they've tried and tried and tried to tell their people where they're going. And it just seems like it goes in one ear and out the other. This point in the pyramid of commitment, achieving commitment through clarification and buy-in. Your comment about being fully heard and fully considered, that's powerful. You have to be genuine. You have to be authentic, and you have to seriously. Here's the deal. Being certain as a leader where you're headed with your organization actually contains blind spots, because you're so certain where you want to go that it becomes a pound the table, yell to get it in there. And yet someone may have some buy-in that or some information that will make that strategy even better. So that, it's a difference between telling somebody something and communicating it to them so that the idea has been exchanged. Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Well, when you were saying that, I thought of Judith Glaser in her book, Conversational Intelligence, calls it the tell, sell, yell syndrome.
Right.
I tell you, but if you didn't hear me, then I started to try to sell you. Mm-hmm. And then when you didn't buy into what I was saying, I yell at you to get it done. Right.
Ouch.
And that doesn't have commitment to it. It's just like, okay, you have their head, maybe you have their hands, but you don't have their heart and definitely not their guts at that point.
Right. That's great. Now we're kind of in the middle of this pyramid. So I want to remind everybody, the 2 pillars that we're talking about is pillar number 1, dysfunctional teams can change. So if you're a leader who has just resonated with what we talked about and you're licking your wounds, don't lose hope. Dysfunctional teams can change, and cohesive teams will thrive. They can thrive when they're cohesive. All right, let's move to the next pillar, which is accountability.
Yeah. So accountability is where a lot of leaders or a lot of people are going to think this is where our problem is. Like,
Mm.
this is where it's showing up on these last two, and they're thinking, I can't get my people to be accountable, right? Or we're not being accountable. There's not really accountability around here. There's not accountability because people aren't committed. People will be accountable to what they're committed to. There's not going to be this stress and struggle of trying to keep someone accountable to what they're committed to. If somebody's not committed, you're going to work not tirelessly. You're going to work in a tired state, trying to make them remain accountable, trying to keep accountability. If someone's committed, the accountability becomes a checkpoint. It becomes a point of growth every time, a point of development and evolution. So, accountability is here because it stands on these bottom three. There has to be commitment. We usually, if we have an accountability problem, we it's somewhere below that is the real problem, and we haven't generated the commitment that is needed collectively to get there.
Yeah, so there's almost a line across here where it's all, what I'm picturing is the tip of the iceberg. You've seen that picture where you see the iceberg, but then you see below the water.
That's good. Yeah.
It's almost like all of this is going on and being ignored by leadership or the team leader, and they're hanging out in the upper part, frustrated, spinning their wheels over and over. All the while, there's no trust. Conflict isn't being constructive, and there's no commitments being made. Everybody's just putting in their time, right?
Yeah. And below the iceberg it's relational. Above the iceberg, it becomes more transactional. And so you put those two together, below and above, it becomes transformational. So the below elements of relational, again, those transactions, that can work in one-off situations. That can work with clients that you only meet with monthly or annually or something like that. But on a team, the relational component is so much more vital because it's every day, or it's multiple times a day, or multiple times a week.
Wow. So if you're a leader listening right now, this should provide you some hope. It really should. Now, you got a lot of work to do. If you've been hanging out here for a long time, you've got to untrain your team players, your team members, and you've got to do some real good hard work. But it's worth it, right?
No doubt about it.
All right. Well, let's move on to the fifth and final, right at the very top of the triangle. What's that?
Yeah, so that's results. And results are the things we all love, right? So a basketball arena or a soccer stadium is always full when there's a team winning. And it's oftentimes empty when they're not winning, because people want to see great performance. Results is about performance. It's about high performance, great performance. It's a high-performing business. It's a high-performing athletic team. It's a high-performing school system or government agency. I mean, it can be anything. It's one that they're getting the results. They're probably seeing lives impacted. They're seeing profits in the bottom line, and they're able to perform at a high level. Now, if we look at the dysfunctional side, right, that dysfunction that needs to be changed, if there's the lack of these things below, and there's a lack of accountability, commitment, conflict, and trust, then people start to focus on their individual results. It's not that they're not results focused. They're focused on protecting themselves. So this is where you have the team members that are competing against others rather than working cohesively together. This is where they're in fear and protect mode, right? Their brains are in fight, their bodies are in fight or flight, and they're all about territory, right? Protecting their territory, and they're not opening up to anything else. Now, you bring that into the cohesive level where that commitment is there together. We trust one another. We've had that healthy conflict, and we're naturally accountable with ease. We're focusing on the collective results because the trust is strong enough that I know when you challenge me, you're doing it for my good and the collective good of the whole team.
Wow. Okay. So let's do a review based on the graphic. At the very bottom and central, fundamental to a great team is building trust where there's vulnerability without fear of repercussion. That allows for us to master conflict, which is the second rung up, through constructive debate. The third one up is achieving commitment through clarification and buy-in. Remember, this is where we talked about not just listening to someone so they're heard, but what was the word you used?
Well, being fully considered, genuinely considered, yeah.
Fully considered, which leads to embracing accountability where there's full attainment of commitments. So accountability to their commitments, all of which reaches the peak of this triangle where the focus is on the results of the collective outcome.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a great summary.
Right. Wow. This is just like the tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning. I would love to continue this conversation because every one of those can be fleshed out. And a leader who has been exposed to this new information for the first time, and they've been living at the results and accountability unsuccessfully, needs to know more about trust and conflict and commitment. So that leads me to our last segment, which is the takeaway. And it's very simply, talk to Tim. If you have got a team and you are you're struggling to get that cohesiveness that is so important, you need to talk to Tim. You can find him at timothyfigley.com. He's also on LinkedIn. He's everywhere. Just Google Timothy Figley and you'll find him. He looks like that on the screen, only he doesn't have the headphones on normally. Right. So
yeah, and that other guy that's on the screen, he may or may not be there as well. There he is.
There he is. Yeah, that's an example of us collaborating together. Yeah. So Tim, thank you so much for taking this time to explain and walk up through the triangle of the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's fun and it's rich. So I can't wait to join you again.
Okay. All right. So this has been another episode of Fridays on Excellence, where we dig into 6 areas of life and see what excellence we can find through clarity and through action. And my name is Scott Kokenauer. I'm so glad that you took time out to tune in. We will talk to you next week when we talk about our next pillar. I'll talk to you later.